Comic books are a very popular medium and have come to the forefront even more in recent years. But are you aware of the dark history behind them? Do the violent, sexualized, and often corrupt nature of their storylines influence young readers in a way that perhaps they shouldn't be influenced? Today, we'll be discussing the darker side of comic books. Hello and welcome to Dirty Little Secrets here at the House of Secrets in Burbank, California. I'm your host Trisha Hershberger, and today I am joined by Amy Dallen and DJ Wooldridge.
Hello.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself, Amy.
My name is Amy Dallen. I talk about comic books over at Geek and Sundry, and I work right here at the House of Secrets.
Woohoo! Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
DJ, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Well, the best way to find me is actually on this channel, Fright-O-Verse. You can watch short films that I write, sometimes direct, and programs like this.
Awesome. And what do you do from day to day?
From day to day, I edit for SourceFed Nerd.
And you read comic books.
I do read comic books. I read
Find him here at the House of Secrets.
Regularly, yeah. Pretty regularly.
So you guys are the absolutely perfect guests to have here today. We're going to start off with a little segment called Fact or Fiction.
Oh my.
You ready? I'm going to read a statement. You're going to tell me if it's fact or fiction. Harry Dannenfeld is widely known as the founder of comics. Before he did that, he was a bootlegger. Fact or fiction? Amy?
Pretty much fact.
Okay,
Yeah.
DJ?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's one of those, like, my understanding is it wasn't like a fish, like, he didn't get arrested for it, but everybody's kind of under the understanding that he was a bootlegger. And
At least if you work with them enough, are you technically part of the bootlegging process?
Maybe, yeah, I think
there's
so.
all those connections. They were like, we need to move a lot of stuff from here to there.
Yep.
It's paper. It's Canadian paper.
Yeah,
That's what we're moving.
He also hustled Tijuana Bibles and stuff like that. So he's a pornographer too. And,
Exactly.
yeah.
Perfect. Well done. All
I
right.
don't know about that founder of comics though. He's in there.
He's
one of.
He's one of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the 1950s, a book was published that made many believe comic books made children into delinquents. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
Yeah, Seduction of the Innocent.
Yes! By Dr. Wortham, Seduction of the Innocent, published in 1954. Actually, he did an experiment, and his findings were that juvenile delinquency was caused by kids who read comic books. Like a lot of kids that he talked to.
Well, I think a lot of it, I think they found out that one of his studies, like he listed like a guy, like this person murdered these people, and he essentially went to like the most notorious serial killer of the day and said, did you read comics when you were young? And he was like, yeah. Boom! Comics cause you to be a serial murderer.
Well, and the other millions of children who read them, since they also went out and murdered. Wait, science.
Whoops.
Just kidding. And apparently he would like grill kids and be like, "Do you read comic books? Do you feel guilty about it?" And they were like, "I guess so." So you know that's a good way to get results that you want. All right, another one. Although many believe that comic books inherently influence readers in a negative manner, certain characters always have a moral compass. For example, Batman has never killed anyone. Fact or fiction?
Well, like Elseworlds, regular Batman stories? That's a big question.
I would say fiction because in his earlier appearances, Batman had a gun and he shot people in the face.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct, DJ Wooldridge. Yes. Batman, in the more recent times, doesn't kill anyone, but in the very early years had a gun.
Day.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of that, the no kill rule and stuff, came from Comics Code Authority. Wortham's book made the comic book industry start the Comics Code Authority, which was supposed to be a self-regulating thing.
Yeah.
It was really DC and Archie Comics saying, we don't like EC comics and all their horror comics, so we're going to
You guys are selling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to make a code that pretty much you can't have horror in the title. Pretty much you can't publish the books you're making, and kind of destroyed that whole publisher.
No stories where criminals have any success.
Nope.
No love stories that end sadly. Which is a weird one.
Yeah.
Romance comics got hit hard by the Comics Code Authority.
What?
Like,
That's insane.
because you couldn't tell inappropriate stories or anything about anyone cheating or any of this stuff.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
You gotta, there's fantastic stuff in
The only
there.
thing the Comics Code Authority really helped was Archie Comics and DC Comics at the time.
That's
Well, and it led inadvertently to the Silver Age and the superhero renaissance
true.
because that genre had pretty much stopped selling. But everyone was like, well, we can't publish anything that's making any money right now.
Exactly.
So what else have we got? Bring the Flash back.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Let's retool Green Lantern and sell more of those.
I don't knows? For me, some of the reason that I'm drawn to comics is for the darker, grittier. I mean, you know, you're reading the sagas, you're reading those books where it's taking you places you don't get to go in real life, which is the fun of comics.
Some of those places are sad and scary.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part about the medium is that it is a medium where it's gotten to a point where it's a medium where you can do anything. You know what I mean? People like Grant Morrison are successful where it's some of the strangest, craziest ideas you could ever read, and you wouldn't get those in the movies or in TV, you know?
It's very hard to translate sometimes. So we reached out on the Twitter space and asked you guys if comic books were really more of an art form or like kind of a power fantasy over-sexualized, like if it had a negative influence or a positive influence. And you commented back out, Latinum Gamer said, depends on the comic. It's an art form, but some people can use it for fantasy. And I think that it has a lot to do with how the person's taking it in and who that person is. I mean, it's hard to say that a certain medium will take someone who's like a completely normal, healthfully functioning individual and just...
I don't think they can put anything in you that wasn't there before.
Right.
That's very true.
Except good ideas, like about expanding your mind. Like, you can learn things about the world, you can become wiser and more compassionate, but I don't think you can read something that takes you back inwards, that makes you convinced that other human lives have lost value.
Right.
Like, that's not how it works. You can gain empathy. I don't think you can gain sociopathy.
Like, just because you see a character in a comic kill hundreds of people doesn't mean that you necessarily think it's okay to go out and kill hundreds of people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of concerns, like recently with comics, comics started from the pulps. Like, it was a pulp, Donenfeld that we were talking about was a pulp publisher and kind of segued into that. So it to sell copies, it went into more lurid material. And I think you've seen kind of an uptick in that. Like, a New 52 got a lot of heat for its over-sexualization of characters like Starfire and stuff like that.
There is a time and a place
for
deliberate cheesecake, and it's not pretending to be superheroes.
Yeah, I think that's... Again, I think it depends on the story. Like most things, like what you can't say, like video games recently have gotten a lot of, like, the video games are bad and they ruin people. Well, it depends on the game, and it depends on what it's trying to do, and it depends on, you know what I mean? Like, I think you're right though. I don't think it'll make you evil. It's just
you won't
some
say
are
all
good and some
comic
are
books
bad.
or all video games are evil.
Yeah.
At Board Geek says they can reflect the aspects that are wrong with society.
Yeah, they can reflect them thoughtfully, or they can reflect them unthoughtfully, which is how you get things like if you criticize sexualization in something, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't want sexual content in your comics, like Saga, like you mentioned.
Right.
It might mean that you don't want it to accidentally be there because you haven't thought through that you have a bunch of misogynistic ideas in your head.
Very good point. Although I have to say, as a little girl looking at comics, I always kind of like loved the voluptuous, powerful women. Like, I was like, I want to be that, because it wasn't like, well, I mean, you find your characters that are the damsel in distress that just happen to have their tits up to their chin.
Yeah.
But you also see, like, the Wonder Woman. You see these women that are strong and powerful and really hot.
Well, you have Wonder Woman, and then you have, like, Lady Death.
True.
And there's this point where it's like, okay, well, there are a million variations of sexy out there, and it's great that there are ones that are, like, strong and sexy.
Yeah.
But it's, like, this... And it came into mainstream comics in, like, the 80s and 90s in this way that, like, you can look back at art from, like, the 60s and 70s, and it's idealizing. But you know how everyone always says, like, oh, well, they're both sexualized because they're both fantasy figures. It's like, well, once upon a time, they were both idealized in similar ways.
Right.
That's not true anymore. One is idealized in a heavy sexual way, and one is idealized in a different way.
Well, I think that's indicative of, over-sexualization of females in media in general. Not just, like, it's just becoming more and more predominant in culture to be like, that girl needs to be sexy and like this, but that guy can be skinny or fat or whatever, because guys can be whatever body type, but women have to be this type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not smart enough to know what the sociological causes of that in modern society are, why it's becoming, I don't know if we're just noticing it more, if it's becoming more of a thing, but I do, I don't know.
Not sure how you feel about that.
Yeah. Well, no, it's interesting because I know David Goyer got a lot of heat recently for calling She-Hulk Slut Hulk. And I think...
Craig Mazin said that, but he did jump on it.
Yeah, he did jump on it and everything.
Okay.
And it's one of those... But I think you look at that character and she does... And again, it depends on the artist, too, how sexualized she is. But I can't think of a She-Hulk comic in the recent times that wasn't focused on her being a lawyer and her being smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's
And
like
he
all
made
the
this
characters
joke that I don't know if you read these comments, but he made this thing that like they only came up with her because it was the only person that Hulk would be able to screw, right? And we're like, they're cousins. A.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
So if that was the goal, you failed right out the gate.
Yeah.
And B, like she's been not about that basically from the beginning. There's always been jokes. Like there's that one John Byrne story. Have you read the one? It's somebody sat me down with it because I haven't read that much of the Byrne FF. But there's a John Byrne She-Hulk. I think it's in FF where like she's sunbathing on the roof of the Baxter Building and somebody like takes pictures of her. It's a paparazzi story.
Yeah.
And she basically the conclusion, spoiler alert, is that she tracks the dude down, finds his safe full of money, and like crushes it with her bare hands. And like it's this great thing that plays on the fact that like they gave her a supermodel.
Yeah.
They sure did. But like it's this completely empowered story of this wonderful character who's just the last person that you would pick on for that particular
of the ones to like hone in on. Especially when you mention somebody like Lady Death. Oh, that's something. Yeah, you might have a point there. I don't know.
90s. Good time.
Well, but then you get the people, then it turns into the shaming of the cosplay culture because they're trying to dress like their favorite comic book or video game characters. And in that are then, because they're emulating something that people would consider shameful, then they are being considered shameful. And it just kind of spins into this horrible cycle. Just like the characters you like. Just, if you want to dress up like a comic book character or a video game character, have fun.
Be you.
Exactly. Well, and also, I'm all for sexualization and titillation. I just like it to be even.
You do say that, and I've always loved that about you, DJ.
A lot of cleavage, or like if you're gonna have some female nudity, you have to have some guy nudity too. I mean, why? You watch something like Game of Thrones, and like you'll see a guy's ass for like 10 seconds, and then you'll have an entire scene with a woman naked, and it's like
Or
there's
a lot of shows, particularly on Stars, where you'll see lots of very super attractive naked women, and then like fat old naked dude.
Yeah.
That's not cool. How's that fair to your female viewers?
I desperately want to see. I want to see a sitcom with like an overweight woman and like a supermodel husband. Like I want to see the reversal.
Yeah, the Queen of Kings.
Yeah, exactly. I desperately want to see that. I think it'd be great.
That would be awesome. I concur. At Backsorn says, comics encourage free thinking and creativity. So yes, governments don't want this.
That's the question. Are they dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Well, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Yeah.
Like you can get that idea pretty far with a comic book, it turns out.
Well, actually, and I think comic books are interesting because I don't feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't feel like they're quite as scrutinized in a corporate level as movies or TV. Because they're not.
No one's making any money,
financially,
so there's not as much
exactly.
riding on it.
And so you can get away with more. Like the fact, like I mentioned Grant Morrison earlier, Warren Ellis. The fact that people like that are wildly successful in that industry.
Yeah.
And I don't think they would be in any other industry. I don't think the idea is that because it's not as scrutinized, you can get away with more thematically. Like something like Saga, like you mentioned Saga earlier.
Yeah.
I don't think would like. Somebody would see the success of Saga and say, hey, let's make a movie out of that. I don't think it would ever come into existence as a movie because of how wild it is. And that's the great part of the media. And that's what provides the free thinking of it. It's that you're going to be presented with ideas that you wouldn't get normally.
And that's been true throughout the history of comics, obviously. Even when the Code was going on, that sort of gave rise to underground comics coming up, and you get your Zaps and your Fat Freddy and all this other stuff where they were just exploring everything that didn't fit into the Code. But it is interesting that, like, those really, like, your Warren Ellis and your Alan Moore and your Grant Morrison all came up during the Code. They just sort of found either ways around it or ways to inject their voice anyway. So it's interesting. It should have killed, like, that kind of creativity in comics, but it didn't.
I guess you can't shut down creativity.
No. So do you guys overall think that for the livelihood of the comic industry, they should try to be more that kind of archy, good-natured, ideal, let's appease parents who are censoring everything for our kids? Should they move in that direction, or should they continue to be just as gritty as they started?
I think the key is that we have to have options. We have to have a variety of content. Like, you have fantastic, solid, all ages content is wonderful, and it's important because I want to have stories that are actually appropriate to hand to kids.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a good thing. You get books like Lumberjanes, which I like to plug everywhere I go, and recently went ongoing from Boom,
Woohoo!
which is an all ages story about girls at summer camp fighting monsters.
Awesome.
And it's absolutely fantastic, and it doesn't need to have the content that Saga has, because I actually can't hand Saga to a 10-year-old unless they're a very special advanced 10-year-old. And speaking of which, 8-year-olds, stop buying Walking Dead. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I love that comic exists. I need it to exist because it's really fun and addictive.
Yeah.
But we have to have variety out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my answer, I guess.
Yeah,
For
absolutely
sure.
agree. All right, so I don't have something cool to share, like as cool to share as somebody like Misty. But
alert. Hey.
I did have this here.
What is this?
This was made for me by my father. We used to collect non-sports trading cards, which equaled superheroes back in the 90s. This isn't really a thing anymore. We started doing this when my sister was born. And I don't have my whole set with me. Those was back at my parents' place. But he made this plaque for me back when he first started woodworking. And I think this was the start, with not only for my obsession with comics, but storytelling in general. Like, you read the back, like the backstories of all the characters and everything.
It's 90%
So that was
clear
cool for me.
ultra.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it so much.
If this isn't enough for you kids, also right now we are going to premiere a little teaser. We're going to do an Animal Man short, the DC Comics character. We're going to give a little tease of that right now, right here.
This is all your fault. Who the hell do you think you are?
I'm Animal Man. The man with animal powers.
Who?
Awesome. So for you folks at home, where do you think comics should be heading in order to continue and thrive? Or are they doing as well as they can be right now and just keep going with what you're going with? Let us know in the comments below. Please like this video. Subscribe to Fright-O-Verse if you want to see anything else horror. We've got horror shorts on here. We've got more of this type of discussion show. Lots of stuff for you to check out. I'd like to thank Amy and DJ for joining us today. Thank you guys so much. And Amy, if the folks at home want to see more of you, where can they go?
Yes, I am on Twitter. I am Enthusiamy, for obvious reasons. And I'm on Geek and Sundry Vlogs is where you can find me right now every other Tuesday.
Excellent. And DJ, where can people find you?
Right here.
Right here at Fright-O-Verse.
Fright-O-Verse.
On the
Fright-O-Verse
couch
is where you can
at
find
House of
my
Secrets.
stuff, occasionally on Source by Nerd. Trisha, where can they find you?
Oh, well, they can find me at youtube.com/nerdychick5, where I vlog naked, but it's not as sexy as you might think. Yeah, or on Twitter at thatgirltrish, no I am the girl. Awesome, well, thank you guys so very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.